top, you'll see a word cloud that combines all of the community feedback that we received, and you can see the biggest word was speed. So we took that input, we took the data and the safety analysis, combined that into the recommendations that we were putting forth to the public at our open house, and allowed them to vote on whether they would support or oppose these recommendations. From that, we turned it into the final plan and really outlined the priorities for each one of these strategies for the public overall. So it's getting those specific projects and recommendations that reflect the current community values and needs. And with that, I will turn it over to Kristen.
Thank you, Alyssa. I'm going to walk through now some of the planning side of developing a comprehensive plan after having covered some of the community engagement pieces. So as Alyssa and her team on the engagement side is working with the community on the front end to start getting their feedback on the plan development, our planning team on the back end is working to ensure that the data collection and the plan review process is as streamlined and as efficient as possible. Oftentimes in comprehensive plans, they can be really data heavy and not action oriented. So what we want to do is make sure that, one, we're using those verified national sources like American Community Survey, the U.S. Census Bureau, all of those national organizations provide that data for you on a 5-10 year basis. We plan to use that data, but then also we plan to verify that data with the community to ensure that those national trends are a reflection of what community members are actually seeing every day. So that local verification is what's really important to make sure that what American Community Survey is saying is what your neighbors are saying as well in the community. And the result of this is just a really lean, comprehensive data review process that saves time, resources, and budget. As we were thinking about this presentation and this project with you all and working with the community, we really reflected on the last 20 years of our relationship with the city of Blair and working with you all on successful projects like Generations Park and others. And as we thought about that conversation and those ongoing conversations with you all, these top 6 priorities really rose to the top for us as being focus areas for the comprehensive plan. So I'm going to run through each of them just very briefly. But I would also say that this is not the end of the list. That part that Alyssa talked about engaging with the community and ensuring that we're getting input from all corners of the community is really important to making sure these focus areas are reflective of what you all feel. So managing where and how you grow. As a city council, this is obviously really important to you all. You deal with these things every meeting of land use, zoning, annexation issues. And your strategic growth strategy is really what's going to set you up for success for those uncontrolled factors that you have no control over when and how they happen. Population changes, what industry decides to come to town, your transportation demands that happen every day. So those are things that you can't control, but then we'll help you identify what are those land use and zoning strategies that you can use to help control those outputs in the future. Along with probably every community in the state of Nebraska and across the country right now, we're dealing with a housing issue. We have extensive experience with this as a firm working with the state of Nebraska's Department of Economic Development on their 6 Regions 1 Nebraska initiative, which is looking at identifying and resolving housing issues across the entire state. We also have extensive experience working with Washington County, Gateway Development, other communities in the county like Fort Calhoun on developing their own housing plans as well. So we have thorough knowledge and experience working with housing in the area, and specifically as it relates to Blair's situation with housing. In terms of your economic development situation right now, you have a mismatch between what your industry growth is currently showing and what your available workforce is showing. So there's that misalignment between those 2 groups, and we want to work with you to identify what is that right balance so that we're not meeting only demands of one industry, but we're creating a diversity of industries within the community that support all workforce types. Transportation system constraints, I'll let Tim talk more about this later on, but essentially, obviously, as you grow as a community, your transportation needs are going to continue to grow as well, and then also how that integrates into your Safe Streets for All action plan that you guys will be doing here soon too. Your infrastructure capacity is obviously a big issue that we prioritized as well in this review of your needs. And one thing that we came up with as being a potential solution to looking into your infrastructure expansion is getting really creative with finding funding sources. So JEO has a dedicated funding specialist team who's been able to identify over $1 billion of external funding from either the federal or the state government to help support all the communities that we work with. Because when you have a limited tax base and we only have the population that we have, that's the only tax dollars we have to work with. So we got to get kind of creative in how we look to other sources for funding. And then finally, and probably most importantly, how do we stay Blair through all of this, right? How do we stay our true character and our true identity as a community and why people want to live here and continue to stay here as we continue to grow and manage these different changes that happen through the years. So our team has personally seen this through our 20 years of experience working with you all, but then also even our JEO employees who live in the community. They go to your annual events like your Christmas celebration. We're invested in Blair and we want your identity to shine through in that final plan. One way we plan to do this is through strong collaborative goal setting process. Alyssa talked about it a little bit before, but we would first begin with a strategic planning workshop with you all as a city council, some of your city staff, department heads, city leadership, get that group together to come to consensus around what is our shared vision for the future of Blair. From there, we take it back to the community and show them those results and say, does this feel like the future that you want for Blair? What other feedback do you have for us? And then that collaboration just continues throughout the entire planning process. And one way we're going to do this is through focus group conversations. And I've identified just a few of what those might potentially be, but most notably, we would capitalize on the transportation focus group as being a way to overlap with your SS4A plan. That'll be happening at the same time. As we start to identify your goals and your vision in the comprehensive plan, we start to get into then implementation. How are we going to get it to actually be successful and put it into action? You probably have heard this saying before, don't let your plan sit on a shelf. But for us, action is always implied in the plans that we do. Where we take it a step further is creating sustained momentum behind our plans. And we do this through figuring out the plan's feasibility. What are we signing up the city for long term? Is it reasonable? Is it prudent? Is it fiscally responsible? And then we also look at project prioritization to make sure that we're getting the best ROI on the projects that we decide to invest in. And then finally, progress tracking is accountability. If there's no way to track our progress, how are we knowing if we're making any progress? How we do this, and one method that we would recommend, is hosting a scenario planning workshop with city leadership and key city staff. We would take them through different scenarios of growth projections to help see if you maintain your 2.5–3% annual growth that you have seen, what does that mean for city services? Versus, let's say, a scenario of really high growth of 10%. What does that look like? How do we plan for that if that would happen tomorrow? So we would go through that whole process, and ultimately we create a prioritized list of projects that need to be developed. It's fiscally responsible, allows us to prioritize certain budgets for projects, and then it also helps to preserve that community vision that we established in the goal setting process. Along the lines of strategic planning and identifying ways to grow, I'm going to have Tim come up and talk a little bit more specifically about how this relates to your transportation network.
Raise the mic a little bit. Good evening, everyone. Good, my name's Tim Adams. I'm with WSP and on the JEO team. I'm a professional engineer. I work a lot on strategic plans and comprehensive safety action planning. And I want to talk about how the City of Blair can plan for strategic growth. Just as Alyssa and Kristen have talked about, the really important side of bringing humanity to these plans and getting engagement and seeing what the community needs and wants for these plans. We also want to make sure this is also a data-driven plan, one that we're taking in a lot of inputs and also we are tailoring the outcomes. So for example, this WSP works with the Omaha Council Bluffs metropolitan area on their travel demand model, which touches on the fringes of Blair and sometimes incorporates it in some of its efforts. So something that we do is we work with the community on how we're planning for the growth in the city and how we're prioritizing the outcomes that we want to see. And so what we want to take the city through is when you guys are looking at the outcomes you want to see is how are we prioritizing travel patterns? So are people, you guys are very familiar with bypasses, for example, are the travel patterns that you're seeing through the city desired? So how do we account for maybe changing that? And we can put in new street networks and new connections within the community to see how that is going to affect the overall network itself. We can also plug in growth projections. We just looked at population growth. Is it a very aggressive? Are we seeing that in the data? Are we bringing a lot more jobs? And so how is that going to affect our tax base? And so we're going to be able to tailor those outcomes to what you are going to want to see as a community and what we're grounding in an analysis. And the last one I'll talk about is funding scenarios. We touched on this that, if you get a growing population base, obviously that's more tax money coming into the community, and then that comes with a lot more services that can be provided, a lot more projects that can be built. And we want to walk the community through what that might look like, but if it's going to be a bit more of a consistent growth rate, what is funding a lot of these projects look like? We know nothing's really getting cheaper right now, whether it be tariffs or additional inflation, but we want to be looking at that and making sure that you have a plan that can work for you and not something that's too aggressive that we can't achieve. So all that is going to go into a lot of the modeling we want to do for the city. And then when I was talking about priorities, when we work with the community and the leaders, we know that something we will probably hear is that our number one priority is safety. But we also want to talk, and you're already showing that by pulling together an effort for a comprehensive safety action plan. We want to both coordinate that effort with this plan and integrate it. But we also know that we also have other priorities in our community, such as the state of good repair. So how well are we maintaining our streets and other infrastructure, wastewater infrastructure, for example? How are you maintaining our operations through our city? Are we getting stopped at every intersection? Are people being able to move through it? And then as well as project costs. We can't just prioritize every project that comes along. We've done these efforts with the city of, I'm showing the city of Bellevue on the map there, but we worked with 17 communities in the Omaha Metro, worked on a comprehensive safety plan, and that went through their CIPs looking at projects that have a safety focus, but at the end of the day, it wasn't always the best safety project that made it to the top of the list. It was the ones that could be built. Because we knew that sometimes the best safety project needs to be paired with realistic outcomes. Like, this street is in perfect condition. I know it has a safety issue right now, but we could go after this other good safety project that we can combine and prioritize because it could receive federal funding, for example. So we want to make sure that this plan is able to be implemented based on assessing the state of safety and other priorities in the community. I just want to iterate, when I talk about integration, we're very aware that there's a comprehensive safety action plan that's going to be done for the community, and whether or not our team is able to be a part of that planning effort or that we're working alongside it, we're very familiar with those types of plans coming together. For the Vision Zero Omaha, WSP and GEO work together on that one, then not only that one, but also Safe Streets Lincoln up in Sturgis and Omaha Ames Avenue. And particularly, we're used to a lot of planning efforts going on alongside us. And I think the worst thing that could happen is that we're battling with two different plans, right? And so we want to make sure that we're having the same conversation. I think with a lot of the planning efforts or a lot of the engagement efforts that were discussed earlier, is making sure that we're working together with those plans. I think there's a term of engagement fatigue. When you come into a community and it feels like, didn't we just get talked to about a certain issue? And making sure that we're coordinating with that when you're telling us, maybe our team, about your priorities, that we're sharing it across the city, and whoever the city is working with on whatever planning effort. So it doesn't feel like you're saying it over and over again without anybody listening. And next I want to add that WSP, we're a national firm and we have a lot of resources. I'm right here in Omaha, the Omaha community, but we bring to the table a lot of data resources. What I'm showing here on the screen is an image from, it's a platform called Replica. But it's what we purchase all this data ourselves that we can share and use with our clients. So for example, this is showing how people are choosing to travel around the city of Blair. You can tell it's a couple years old because you're not seeing that south bypass being highlighted there. So we can get obviously modern data, a couple years newer data, but we can see how people are choosing to travel depending on their mode, right? Most people are going to be choosing to drive in the community, but again, when we're looking at priorities going into the future, how should we balance people that, do we want to start encouraging pedestrian walkability in the community, people to bicycle, maybe rural transit services, for the elderly, things like that. We can also take this data and use it for origin and destination. We can see where people are wanting or are coming from and wanting to go, specifically through your community. And I start to think about the possibility of a north bypass. I know it's been on the minds of the community a little bit. Are we removing the right amount of truck traffic through the city? But what would it look like? Are people actually wanting to get through the city in a certain manner, and we could maybe remove them from there? Or is it a priority to keep a certain amount of traffic and economic activity on our streets? All these are questions that we want to weigh out with the community and help them analyze. So, the last thing I'll talk about with streets is incorporating the idea of complete streets. We really like to help communities. This image is maybe kind of prescient it's a Main Street rural town. This is a project we did in Missouri. It was called a blueprint for arterials. And we helped communities look at typology, so types of cross-sections that were appropriate for the type of economic activity, the type of land use, and seeing what kind of street should maybe be built in that area or how it should be oriented. And it's basically giving you a design platform and a guidance for your city and the community to see, yes, that's the kind of thing I want my Main Street to look like. You can see that there's a semi going down the Main Street of this rural cross-section, which is maybe not ideal, actually. But that's something that we want to work with you and maybe help provide a guide for the city so that not only that the city personnel, but people, the consultants that you bring on, that there's a consistent expectation. And when you're able to encourage development going forward, we know that it can be challenging when developers come in and they want to build, whatever it might be. They have a very firm idea of what they want to do, and they want to probably save money on what they're putting in. And a lot of times we can ask developers to maybe pay a bit more for the infrastructure they're putting in, as long as the expectations are consistent throughout that process. I used to work with developers a lot with traffic studies, and all I would hear is, I don't mind paying a bit more for what the city wants to put in part of this development. I just want to know right away so I can plan for it. And this comprehensive plan can do that. And lastly, this comprehensive plan has to be compliant with state and federal guidance. Not only is it to be accepted by the state and to be to go after other resources, but we want to make sure that this plan can align you for future funding opportunities. Now, Kristen touched on that a little bit, but really with the products we put forward, we have a whole national grants team that we want to leverage. That what we're hearing from the feds, especially during this time of, right now we're going to be having a new infrastructure bill coming out in the next 6 months for a continuing resolution. But we want to know what the priorities of the current administration and possibly administrations, 4, 8 years down the road are going to be having, and what kind of funds that the city of Blair can be accessing to make a lot of these projects realities, especially these big ideas. And so we want to make sure we line up the plan for that.
We'll bring this back in. So why the JO and WSP team? So first we have the trusted partnership. Again, we've been a trusted partner with the city for nearly 20 years. And we have a strong ties and relationship to the community, plus the addition mentioned, this plan will be community-driven with strong engagement, ensuring all voices are heard throughout the entire planning process, and we'll bring the public along for the ride as we develop this plan and provide real projects from real people. And finally, our team thinks beyond just providing a final document, we are committed and invested to the strategic growth of Blair. We are also residents and visitors who want to see Blair succeed, and the final plan will give guidance on what that long-term success looks like. From a personal standpoint, my family visits Blair every 4th of July. We are the loud group at the park and the pool every 4th of July, and we love coming here. It is a big part of our family traditions, and now that we have 2 little ones, we're excited to bring them along for the ride. We also look at amenities differently as parents. So what are those things that, as a growing community and bringing more residents in and visitors in, what are those amenities that need to meet some of those needs? The JOWSP team is committed to planning for a better Blair together, and we thank you for your time and the care you put into this planning process already, and we ask that you please consider us for this planning process.
I will start with the first question. About a year ago, our city council did a strategic vision planning, and we actually had a focus group with some citizens from Blair, 2 of whom are here tonight. Would it be possible to take some of the thoughts and findings to input into the comprehensive plan? Can we take those things, those ideas that we came up with,
Yeah,
and implement those?
absolutely. We can definitely use what you've had there, and then maybe build on that a little bit more with another strategic workshop, make sure that that's still kind of aligned with what's going on in the community now. And then Kristen, you got anything else to add to that?
Hitting on, again, the point that we'll want to take time to reconnect with those stakeholders that participated in that and ensure that that vision is still true today, obviously. But then also think about, from that previous process, were there any gaps that we maybe missed or want to identify, or maybe get feedback from those folks who participated and say, was there anything that you felt like we didn't cover that you would like to this time around? So maybe doing a quick kind of SWOT analysis on how that process went and seeing how we can improve it even more without starting from scratch.
Thank you. Are there questions from council?
I have a list. Sorry, audience. Does anybody in the audience like to go first? Jake? Alyssa, a couple questions about your team.
Yep.
So how many comp plans have you guys done as a team together?
Comp plans together, we mainly for JOWSP, we've worked together on a lot of comprehensive safety action plans. Individually, we've worked on separate comprehensive efforts here or there. I'll let Tim kind of talk to WSP's efforts, and then Kristen can kind of bring in some of that JO experience.
Yeah, so comprehensive plans, we recently in the last couple of years worked with Iowa City comprehensive plan. We also did the transportation master plan for the city of Kansas City. And then we've also worked with Overland Park in the last year on their transportation master plan. So.
Okay. Thank you. And then how many do you do? Oh,
Sorry. For JEO side, I was just going to say, we have a long history of doing comprehensive plans at JEO, and most currently have about a little less than half a dozen ongoing currently with other communities in the state, so it's kind of always just an ongoing effort for us. We did do your previous experience together with Mike and his whole team there.
And last, we've got a riverfront out here. Any thoughts on what we would want to do with that comp plan?
I think for any sort of, I mean, if there's ideas that you have, I think we bring those to the table, and I think we talk to the public too on what they want to see. Ultimately, again, this is that community-driven plan. So we can come in with ideas of what we think would work and what would be beneficial to the community, but ultimately, it's up to everyone else to decide what that plan, what that vision's gonna look like and what they want to see at that location.
Thank you.
Kind of dovetailing with what Kirk just asked. Blair has a nascent but growing public transportation needs, so planning for 5, 10, 15 years down the road, I think that we would like to see some engagement on what the community thinks the demand will be or is, and some planning on how we can maybe have different approaches of fulfilling that, whether it be a small plan to an expandable plan over a period of time. Is that something that you think that you can incorporate into that, into this as well?
Absolutely, no, I believe that.
Yeah, we've worked with communities. I think the biggest thing with public transit and the challenges it has is the investment you have to make, right? I mean, the bus itself costs, you could update an entire park, but how much that costs sometimes. So I think what we can also bring when we work with communities, especially smaller communities, is these days there are so many creative ways to provide public transit that we didn't have 20 years ago. For example, the city of Omaha is rolling out, they've had these Moby buses, you know, they're like kind of mini buses, but they're getting even more micro in the transit. It's just becoming, essentially the city itself and Metro is able to set up its own form of Uber. You know, you essentially, we can help the city partner with a third party, essentially app service that basically the city takes on the burden of, essentially it's just a passenger car. It could be a van, you know, and that would have a mobility device attached to it, and that you're able to offer a free Uber service at a fraction of the price of any kind of transit service that a lot of communities have invested in over the last couple of decades. And you're able to give that kind of service on a much larger, much more scalable size, as well as time frames too. Because a lot of times, I mean, fixed routes is just not really maybe a viable thing in the city of Blair, but something that's a lot more flexible for the city as far as costs and services.
Thank you. And then finally, you just mentioned having recently worked with Fort Calhoun. Can you name some other communities that you've recently done comprehensive plans with?
Yeah, I can tell you currently we're working with the village of Cedar Bluffs, Nebraska to update their comprehensive plan. We're also working with the city of Bertrand, Nebraska. It's like down in South Central. Those are the two that we're currently working on. Does that help answer your question? Was you?
Yeah, well, that's fine.
Okay.
Does council have any other questions before we open? All right. Does the public have any questions for Janito? Are you sure?
I'm old, give me a minute. I might have had a senior moment.
You're fine.
Can you tell me specifically what this community engagement looks like? You can see this is people that are very interested and they're gonna make this effort, absolutely. But how are you gonna specifically reach out to folks in a variety of ways?
Right, so that's really, and reaching out in a variety of different ways, in a variety of different groups as well, right? So that's really where those pop-up events are key, because you can hit so many different groups of people that come together for a community event. And so we can be there, asking those questions, having those conversations, really getting that one-on-one feedback and input. For those who maybe aren't comfortable in large groups, we also have the online survey that we can provide them, social media posts that they can kind of follow along with, a website possibly of just like what's the update, what's going on there, and then really looking at targeted groups in Beatrice, for a Safe Streets for All plan that we did there, we actually had a high school focus group. Beatrice, yeah. High school focus group. And so we can look at some of those targeted audiences too. You know, one big thing is just making sure that people who are in Blair want to stay in Blair and come back to Blair and bring, you know, more people here. So looking at those groups and working with leadership of what are those key areas that maybe we can find some of that targeted outreach to do as well.
I would tag on to that too. I'm not signing you all up for this necessarily, but we would want to identify who are the champions that like are very involved in the community, because you guys can reach much further and like into the depths of the community than we even could. So we would really rely on folks like you who are willing and able to participate and use your relationships that you have and the networks that you have to extend further into the community.
Any other questions from the public?
You mentioned considering, you know, the return on investment with big plans, you know, stretch. Do you have any experience gathering infrastructure ROI, like especially when considering in regards to different types of land use? And is that going to be part of your plan that you made it in?
Yeah, I can talk to that. Something that comes to mind, you talk about land use, for example. I think in any kind of comprehensive plan, you're going to be making decisions on what kind of economy maybe the city of Blair wants to plan for. Some communities I've seen rural communities, for example, have gone all in on data centers. That's a very specific type of land use. There's a lot of benefits to that. It brings in hundreds, if not thousands of jobs during the construction phase. But as soon as they're put in, there's maybe a dozen employees there. So not a huge return on investment as far as job creation in the community. So that's something that we want to have conversations, strategic conversations and focus groups around when we look at land use planning and the economy of the community. Now, I think some communities are figuring that out, is if we have a stagnant or static land use where there's not a lot of job growth, what kind of taxes are we putting into place to create further growth for the rest of the city? So that's kind of some experience we've had working with communities, making sure that you're just not putting in on a big promise of, again, I don't want to dog on data centers, but they come with a big promise of a $1 billion thing, and then there's not much return later on if you don't guard yourself right away with the knowledge of that and put yourself ready to, for those limits and economic factors. So.
I think the industrial park is like a great example of that. The future land use there is that industrial focus. And so looking at what is the land use of this area, and then how do we prioritize the economy of scale of different industries that come in and how they're going to make the biggest impact for that designated future land use. Another one would be like your downtown area. What would be the right amount of mixed commercial or mixed use that you would like to see in your downtown area, and what's going to give you the maximum amount of output on tax return compared to the land use and the land scale that you have in that area.
Just to dovetail a little bit off of Jake's question, are you familiar with the group Urban 3? Yep. And their value per acre analysis? They're one of the ones that had submitted some things. Our Strong Towns group has been, interested in that concept. So we've thought about, whether we would partner with them to have them work with the consultant that we do select to kind of do some analysis.
Yeah, I work directly with Urban 3 in Kansas City on their work there, and actually the Strong Towns community. They do a lot of great work. It's value per acre that we're seeing, and a lot of times, you've got a great downtown neighborhood, or downtown land use right there. And a lot of businesses that are fronting, and a lot of business creation on very small patch of ground. And again, Urban 3 does a lot of great work, and we've previously worked with them actually across the country. Most recently, I worked with them in St. Louis a couple of years ago, so very familiar with their work. Yep.
Were you part of the Strong Towns chapter? We have one of Sam on our team started the Lincoln chapter. Sam Audie, if you know him at all, but so.
Now I got a question, kind of dovetailing a little bit off of what you talked about as far as the end product that you do like to produce, which is obviously some achievable goals and some steps how do you present that information then ultimately in the plan and to the city? And do you utilize anything that helps the community track those over time? And especially anything that potentially could be available on our website?
Yep. So there's a couple of different ways that we've done various different reports and plans. We have an in-house graphic design team who works directly with us during the planning process to create these really great documents for print, so you guys can have one in your offices here in the city, as well as developing them to be like interactive PDFs, so you can put it on the website. And we've done that actually with the city of Lincoln and their transportation utilities group. We do an annual report with them every year that kind of covers what their bond initiative provided, and it has photos and videos and projects that you can actually tie back to what that initiative was. So it's really easy to digest for the public. It's something that they can actually see that progress on and how it ties back to that. And then Kristen can talk a little bit more about the progress tracker too.
Yeah, we've utilized ArcGIS previously to develop online dashboards essentially that are either like map-based or visual-based, so that when the city makes progress on a certain project, you can see that dollar investment, you can see how it's been impacted in the community visually on a map. So it's very intuitive and very user-friendly, and makes a written plan kind of become more of a visual picture in your head, so that you can actually see what the planning effort has looked like when it's come to fruition.
Any other questions?
Probably sort of you guys, but aimed more at the city. I love that you can identify funding sources that will help us with this. That's a tiny piece of it. So grant writing and grant management is pretty intensive. Do we have that infrastructure to follow up on your wonderful recommendation or identifying sources?
So I will say both of our teams have grant writing specialists who can support cities in those efforts as well. So we've worked with cities who have writers, just kind of help identify and maybe just do some checks to make sure that they're getting all the boxes covered. And we also have specialists on both of our teams that can actually help write those grants too. So we have experience in that too, just from our side as well.
And management as well. I mean, those are two different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you.
We have CDBG certified funding specialists on our team too that can help you plan for any CDBG funding that might come out of the comprehensive plan. And then also, Terry Meyer specifically in our Lincoln office is one I work with frequently, and he's been doing it for 20 plus years, so he's applied for the same grant multiple rounds, multiple times with other communities, so he knows what they're looking for too. So he's been able to kind of keep that that knowledge in his head locked away of like, okay, I'm dealing with DED here, what do they want to see exactly in this application, and because of that, he's been pretty successful on it.
And the city of Blair has used JEO before, Terry before, to put together grants for various purposes. So yeah, they're a great resource and a great partner.
And I would say too, that's not even included in this comprehensive plan. Because we work with the city of Blair, we just offer that to you free of charge, not necessarily with a project contract, so.
Wonderful.
Great question.
we can serve the community of Blair through your comprehensive plan process and updates. So as we get started, I just want to highlight our team. So you may be aware of Olson. We're an engineering firm, but also within that, we're a multiple disciplinary group as well. So we do way more than engineering. So with me here this evening are several members of our team who are transportation planners, community planners, engagement specialists, also some of our water team as well. So we truly are made up of different disciplines, expertise, and have really formed an overall team that we feel can really get you to the scope of your plan. And within that, we've also identified Canyon Research Southwest as a sub-consultant of ours, as well as ETC Institute. And so through that, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Shelby Ferguson, a lead planner within our planning team. And so for this project specifically, I would be the project manager, the day-to-day contact, and also the person who would be behind the scenes running the project, making sure that we're running on schedule, on budget, on time, coordinating not only my team, but also coordinating with yourselves and staff just throughout the entirety of the project. And I'll go ahead and let everyone else here introduce themselves.
Hey everybody, Chris Rowling with Olson. I am the group leader for our transportation planning group. Just sit down the street in Omaha at our office down there in Exorbitant Village, and I'll be the project principal for the project.
Hello everyone, my name is Lizzie Cabot. I'm on the water wastewater team as an engineer with Olson. I've worked with the city of Blair for the last 4 years on many infrastructure projects, and I'm excited as I continue to do that. And I'm here to bridge the gap between community planning and making sure that the public has the infrastructure needs.
Hi, and I'm Kyle McLaughlin. I'm a transportation planner. I'm in the Lincoln office. I focus on citywide master plans, corridor studies. I'm also a very big advocate of community engagement. So one of the things I'll be talking about today, but really appreciate you letting us walk through the process and give our perspective on the scope.
Thanks, Kyle. And I should have also mentioned, everyone here this evening is local. I am coming from, while Olson is local to Omaha, I am coming from our planning team that's located in downtown Kansas City. And with that, I bring 17 years of comprehensive planning and corridor planning and other types of planning work and engagement specialty with my resume. So with that, we'll dive right in. So why are we here? Why is Blair doing this process right now? Wish we could say that we think that you're going to grow, but truly it is. We know that Blair is growing, and how are we going to go about that? How are we going to tap into your employment powerhouse that you have, all of the residential and commercial potential that you have coming down the pipeline, as well as just aligning that growth with your identity and what is that identity. And so just really starting to understand your community, really looking at the green areas, schools, parks, how do we start to align future growth and connectivity to those areas, while then also looking at the anticipated growth and development areas that we understand are being annexed in, as well as our future development areas. And so really understanding at a high level just how do we start to sustainably and grow your community, also with balance in terms of that growth development and the capacity that especially Lizzie's team would be assisting us with. And so really understanding that currently you have a significant amount of jobs and employment, your industry is booming, as well as the potential of that coming around. You have highway access and connectivity, so really building on those strengths and then starting to look at your opportunities that are within your community. So understanding the housing options that are really potential within Blair, and how do you start to look at diverse housing options, and what does that look like, what does that mean, as well as continuing to activate your downtown and understanding how are you moving individuals about your downtown, how are you creating a sense of place, while also providing those daily life, quality of life amenities
not only in your downtown area, but also within all of Blair. So as we start to work through this process, we really understand that these may not be specific things that go into the full plan is in chapters, but we really have areas that we know we're going to focus on and start having conversations with staff, with your elected officials, with the community at public meetings. And so really starting to understand the developable land, where's that development take place, how does that align and you know, with the floodplain, where are you building to make sure that all of your development is truly making sense, that it's in the most appropriate places. Then also kind of looking at the downtown area. As I mentioned, you know, starting to look at how are you rerouting traffic with the bypass and the continued extension of the bypass as your traffic volumes increase. How do you start to reroute that out of downtown? Again, so you have that sense of place, creating and activating your downtown without large vehicular truck traffic and so forth. And so then also looking at the multimodal connectivity piece of this. So not only looking at trails and pedestrian and how are you moving about on bikes, and not just focusing on the vehicular piece of it, but overall within Blair, as future development comes in, as well as your current uses, how do you connect all of those pieces? How do you connect the parks, the schools, and future development? Is something that we really see starting to bubble to the top. And then looking at that housing component that I mentioned, how do you ensure that you're having equitable, attainable housing conversations? What is that diverse mix of housing? Not just single family, but starting to look at multifamily, two dwelling, patio homes. What is that housing development look like, and how do you do that in a balanced way? And then ultimately, as you start to look at those developments and that housing piece, we know that coming with that is going to be resource recovery. So understanding your capacity. You know, we understand that you have some modeling going on in terms of water and wastewater capacity at this time, but then how do you start to plan for that and understand where the most appropriate places are for that development in terms of where can those resources go within Blair as well. So again, these are things that we're knowing already that are going to start to come out of those conversations initially, and we'd love to be able to continue those conversations and build upon them throughout that process. And so that's where we really start to look at moving those topics towards action. And so this evening, I want to, over the next several minutes, start to really kind of look at our three buckets of, you've already heard from two other firms this evening, and I'm sure through the proposals that you went through, you started to see very similar processes. We all have our discovery, our data analysis, our engagement, you know, how we're going to get to the recommendations. But for the Olson team, we really feel that it's not what we do, but it's how we do it. And so really want to focus in on three buckets of how we do it. And so that's putting people first, looking at balanced growth and capacity, and then really how do we do an implementation? It's something that our Olson team takes very seriously, is how do we establish an implementation plan at the end of the day that helps you move your plan forward once the consultant is gone. And so Chris and Kyle and I will touch on each of these buckets and go from there. So again, it's truly what we do, and or it's not what we do, but it's how we do it. And so we've proposed a 13-month time frame here. This was in the proposal, but just want to really highlight within those 5 phases. We're looking at robust engagement from the onset of the project to the very end. We will be engaging with stakeholders throughout the entirety. We'll form a large stakeholder group, engage them in several touch points, a visioning session, a charrette, a final recommendations, a review period, and then throughout that you'll have pop-up events, you know, other online and in-person pieces that Kyle will talk about here soon, but really want to show that it's truly how we're engaging your community and how we're having those conversations and making sure that we're bringing the right people to the table at the right time during that process. And so with that, I'll pass off to Kyle to talk us through people first.
I want to start with, this is awesome that you guys are, you know, the public is here working on hour 3. It's very exciting for the process prospect of getting people engaged. It's always, one of the biggest difficulties in these plans. How do we make the community feel like they're a part of the plan, and how do we get that buy-in of, okay, this is where we're gonna move forward. This is how our community is going to kind of interact. And really that's the heart of it, right? The community members are what make up our community, and we really feel like that's a valuable part of the planning process. As Shelby mentioned, we like to have larger stakeholder groups because it lets us have like a baseline for who is going to be engaged. We believe the larger that stakeholder baseline is, that's one word of mouth away from having 2 people instead of 1 person at the meeting. Each person that's already invested gets to talk to their neighbor about something that we're talking about, gets to spread the survey, gets to include more people in that conversation. And we really, really appreciate you all being here, and think that it's really, really fantastic. This bottom line here, I think it's really valuable that we have everybody's perspectives in these conversations. It's really important to have one neighbor talking to another that may not have the same vision for what the future is, but as long as we're having that conversation, we can maybe come to just an agreement of, okay, you don't get exactly what you want, I don't get exactly what I want, but we all get a say in how we build this thing together. And I think it's a really crucial point, especially now kind of where we are in society. So Shelby went over a bunch of the different pieces of the engagement plan. I wanted to highlight the layered, targeted, and adaptive. So we really believe that having multiple ways to reach people, whether it's through website, through a charrette, through open house, through pop-ups, different ways to reach different people who are doing different things is a really important component to getting that kind of wide breadth of what people are wanting and getting a bunch of the different topics covered. We also believe that there's a lot of reason to do some targeted outreach. So we've got focus groups in our plan. We think that sometimes it's really appropriate for us to talk to maybe just the parents. Maybe it's just the senior citizens. Maybe it's just people who work here but don't live here. All those different people use our community in different ways and need different things. So we really do like to have some different targeted actions. And then lastly, it's adaptive, right? We think we know some really good ways to engage the community, but we want to talk and have conversations the way you want to have conversations. There's no reason to be really rigid and not have some adaptability in, oh, well, that first open house didn't work. Maybe next time, instead of making sure we get that second open house, we use those hours or those dollars in a different way so that maybe we learn from the process as we go. Couple of major points here. We've proposed using Social Pinpoint as the project website. It's a really great resource that allows you to not only host all the information on that website, but it allows for innate surveys, for map-based commenting, and just has a lot of different tools that make it a really kind of synchronous way to push information out to the community. This second page here kind of gives a lower example. It's just this is just a basic web page that has timeline. When's the next time I can have a conversation? When's the next touch point I'll be able to interact with the project? I'm sure everybody had a charrette of some type. It's always good. If we weren't third, I'm sure you would maybe be more useful in what a charrette. But for us, what a charrette is an opportunity for really an intensive time of project and community kind of incitement, right? We take some intentional times, have really intentional stakeholder groups, have really intentional conversations, and just sit there and focus on everything that's brought up. Actually the word charrette comes from little tiny cart. It's a French word that meant the LA students, when the charrette, the little cart would come around, the students would have literally like 3 minutes to finish their work before they have to put it in the cart, and that's kind of the essence of what a charrette is. You need to get everybody focused, really get your mind on what that project is, what those community members are saying, and let's solve that thing and put some solutions forward. I mentioned this earlier, but we really do believe that having flexibility in the way we're approaching these projects, the way we're approaching each plan, is just of value, because it's your community. You know how to engage with people. You know how to get that person, how to have that conversation with your neighbor. And so we want to be flexible in the way that you would like the plan put together, and believe that that's a valuable part for our process. With that, I'll hand it back to Shelby.
Thanks, Kyle. So as we start to go through the engagement process, we really start to, especially the charrette process, because that's a 2-day process where we're data gathering, we're having the stakeholders brain dump, we're really truly hands-on, working in maps, working through a lot of solutions and concepts. And so what that does is it starts to really give us a really good base of where the recommendations are headed. And so that leads us to really starting to understand, how do we start to balance the growth with the capacity? How do we start to form the overall plan? And in that process, through the engagement, through the charrette, we're starting to understand, what are the pressures in Blair? As I mentioned at the beginning, we're starting to understand what some of those topic areas are, what those pressures are, what the opportunities are. And so we start to really form the recommendations, the overall plan, concepts, mapping frameworks, and really pushing that forward to that implementation, pushing it to the possibility of the future of Blair. And so what that really starts to do is it identifies the people that need to be involved at the end of the process. Who's moving that implementation forward? What's coming out of our recommendations? Is it project specific? Are they policies that are being recommended to align your current code or making amendments to your current zoning code or regulations to align with the comprehensive plan and some of the recommendations? Are you establishing new programs, initiatives, things that need to be put in place to help move those recommendations forward, to help move the goals forward over that time frame, 10, 15, 20 years? And then it really starts to look at and identify the partnerships. So the city staff, or you all as elected officials, or the planning commission, are not the only ones having to take every piece of the plan and move it forward and being part of that charge. It's truly looking at, what are the partnerships? How are we working together to move those pieces towards the end goal of the comprehensive plan and the vision for Blair? And so really within that recommendation period, we're starting to look at all facets of the plan and how does that shape up. And so another piece I just really want to highlight is that what drives into those recommendations is Eric Lander, who is our sub-consultant with Canyon Research Southwest, and he'll be performing a economic and market analysis. And so what that really provides us is a lot of background information. So our team will do all of the data analysis, understanding mapping, GIS, data gathering, looking at existing plans. But what Eric will really be doing is coming to your community, staying here for a few days, having one-on-one stakeholder interviews with key stakeholders to understand what are the market trends, what are the real estate needs, and starting to look at really long-term needs in several buckets, looking at housing, retail, commercial spaces, office, and industrial, and starting to write a full report and analysis on, for the projected population 20 years out, what is the square footage that you need in terms of industrial, commercial, office? And so then that helps us understand the capacity component of where are those most appropriate uses and where are they located within Blair. Are there areas that need to be annexed to be able to accommodate the square footage that he's projecting within all of those buckets? And so that's ultimately what he'll be looking at and starting to project within his analysis. And so then it starts to help us look at potential corridors or district areas where that development takes place. And then also looking at it through the lens of quality of life and your livability, your amenities. So layering that in terms of, these are the projections for what we need in terms of growth for office, retail, housing, et cetera. And then also, how do we layer that with the quality of life of Blair? How are we creating a sense of place, the destinations that are needed? So his analysis and being on our team really helps support the understanding of balancing the growth within Blair over that next 10, 15, 20-year time frame. And so really what that then leads us to is once we have the recommendations, we start to focus in how do you attain it? How do you take your plan and move it forward? And we'll let Chris take care of implementation for us.
Okay, last bucket, we're in the home stretch of the presentation. Thank you everybody for listening so far. You're 2.5 hours into the night, we're almost done. So I can talk about something I'm very passionate about, which is implementation. I love doing these plans and taking part in kind of the process with Shelby and Kyle and everybody. But at the end of the day, we need to get past just having some great ideas about what we want the community to look like. We need a to-do list. We need to have that to-do list prioritized. We need to know who's going to do it and when it's going to get done, and more importantly, how we're going to pay for it. And that's what this process, or this part of the process is about, is implementation. As the slide says, we take it very seriously. As these quotes from previous clients suggest, these are all things that the clients we've worked for have said about the kind of final step in our plans, really focusing on getting that to-do list, getting that thing, the tasks that need to be done in order to realize the vision. Because we spent so much time up to this point kind of collecting, creating, we still got to get it done. So that's what this part of the process is about. One of the things that sets us apart on this team in particular is, of course, we have a really strong planning team at Olson, as you've seen here tonight. But we have just as strong engineering teams that work all over the country, as well as here in Blair, as Lizzie mentioned earlier. Across all the disciplines, a lot of the technical infrastructure disciplines that we'll touch on in the comprehensive plan, being able to take the expertise of those folks who know Blair and know how to do this kind of work nationally, and understand not only what the end point is, but how do we back into a plan at the comprehensive plan level in order to kind of set us off on the path to realize the goals we have in each one of these categories. And then at the end of that process, having folks who understand financing, how to understand where to find money and structure money to help pay for the ideas that we have in this plan, and help coming up with some ideas on how to find the money to pay for it and move forward. So that's where our process kind of gets a little bit of a level up in the implementation phase. So the proof is in the pudding. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other plans that we've done that have a little bit of similarity with what we see where we can bring some value to the Blair comp plan. So we'll start with Bellevue. This one was a special one for me. I got to work in my hometown, but also we got to work with Bellevue, who at the time had a lot of very transformative and specific goals that they knew they wanted to accomplish, but needed to also put it in a larger framework of the citywide. How do we blend these very specific ideas into a larger city goal, larger city framework? And so, I'm sure many of you are aware of the Good Life District down in the south part of Bellevue. If you have kids or grandkids, you've heard about the water park that's coming. And so, building a district around that, building a kind of an image around that can then transition or blend into the rest of the city. Taking that kind of very specific idea, or very line it like a pin, and say, okay, we're going to build something around that that also honors the larger vision. Not too dissimilar from some of the industrial type development and other development you guys have kind of earmarked and know is coming in Blair. Being able to understand that that's a fixed point, we got to build something around that that also honors the rest of the community and make sure that we're moving the rest of the community forward in a cohesive direction. There's also a strong focus in Bellevue on active mobility. We built them as part of this comprehensive plan. We ran a long-range transportation plan kind of in parallel. Got some economies of scale, things like public engagement, project management, that kind of stuff. But the real value is to be able to tie what they had for some very specific transportation goals directly into the comprehensive plan, so they can move right into doing some specific projects and additional follow-up plans. So right now they have a RFP on the street to do a active mobility plan. That takes that basic framework that we developed as part of the comprehensive transportation plan, the next level and starts getting some very specific projects that can go out and start getting money for and implementing, and really kind of create that active transportation network, not just as a way of helping people get around Bellevue to buy something other than a car, but really helping create that image of Bellevue as a place that has that kind of an amenity, and for people who live there or want to live there, see that as a value point for living in Bellevue. And again, not too dissimilar from some of the goals that we understand that you all have for Blair. The second one I want to talk about a little bit is West Plains, which Shelby did a great job running this project. I was fortunate enough to kind of ride on the tail end of this project and into the next one that we worked on with West Plains. But a couple of specific outcomes that came out of this, identified some kind of low-hanging fruit that they were able to take right away, with code revisions that really kind of aligned how their code is written to allow development to occur more naturally, more easily, and really start setting them off on the right foot and getting some momentum. But there were some very specific things that West Plains wanted to accomplish as well, including setting up a transportation framework within that comprehensive plan that kind of left a spot that they could plug in a plan they knew was coming, which was the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. And that really added that level of depth and detail to the transportation element of that plan. And so Shelby did a great job of setting up the comprehensive plan to be able to dovetail right into the transportation, the Safety Action Plan, which is something that I'm sure you guys are aware of. There's a Safety Action Plan proposal out right now. So you'll be dealing with a very similar kind of situation, trying to set up your comprehensive plan to kind of work well with that Safety Action Plan. Finally, the picture you see up there is kind of a conceptual framework of their downtown. One thing that they needed to accomplish was just adding a little bit more clarity and depth around the plan in downtown. They didn't need a full downtown plan, just needed to fill in some gaps, and so that comprehensive plan allowed us to kind of take a little bit of a deeper dive into that downtown area, help them flesh out some of the civic areas, add some opportunities for businesses to come in and create some public spaces, and really kind of set them off again right on the right foot to get that downtown in the place they wanted it to be. And the last thing I'll talk about really quick is very specific to transportation. This is some work that I was fortunate to be a part of for Collins, Colorado. We, to start out, is looking at kind of a comprehensive framework for their arterial street network and trying to understand what are the next 10 years of projects look like to help improve safety and mobility throughout the city. But that transitioned very quickly into us collecting results of two other plans that were going on at the same time, the Strategic Trails Plan and the Active Mobility Plan, and taking the recommendations of each one of those plans, understanding they're part of a larger transportation network, and really creating a model and a prioritization structure that allowed them to accomplish those three plans kind of simultaneously, which gave them some efficiencies in executing the plans, but also meant that they only had to tear a road up one time. They didn't have to tear it up to fix a street and then come back and tear it up to fix a sidewalk and then tear it, so it really gave them some efficiencies and quite frankly some credibility with their constituents. So this has been one that's had 2 or 3 projects we just completed in the last couple of years and had 2 or 3 projects already fall out of it and been very successful in Fort Collins. So at the end of the day, we really just need to get these plans to a point where you guys have that to-do list, and that's where I think where we can really add a lot of value to this process, such that we can put you guys on the right foot when we hand this off to you guys for passing the invitation fees.
We're almost out of time, so I just want to quickly wrap up and hopefully not go over too extensively on our 30 minutes, but just really want to wrap up and say why Olson. And so I know you're almost on hour 3 of hearing the why choose, but we truly really feel that the Olson team has the multiple, multidisciplinary piece. We're very engagement driven. It truly is, again, how we go about our process, how we'll engage your community, how we'll be getting all of the information downloaded, and then starting to move those pieces ultimately to recommendations and implementation. But at the end of the day, it truly is a representation. The plan is yours. It's your communities. It's It's not what the consultant came in and told you you had to do because we're the experts or because we're just the people coming in to tell you what to do. It truly will be a representative piece and reflective of what the community's vision is. And so with that, really just want to say, something I'm really looking forward to is one, planning. I've been doing it for, like I said, 17 years, so it's something I'm extremely passionate about. It's something that I love doing, going to new communities, really understanding and learning about each community and its different things that make it tick, but also really setting it up to engaging with your residents, engaging with the city staff and elected officials, and understanding what your vision is and bringing that to life, and not only setting you up with a strong plan for today, but something that will sustain you for the years to come. And so with that, want to highlight again just that overall, again, 4 of us are here, but this is our much larger team, showing all of those vast differences in disciplines. We have transportation planners, land use planners, community engagement specialists, graphic specialists, everything that you could potentially need. We have that within our Olson team and with our sub-consultants. And so with that, I'd love to open it up and have that conversation and any questions that you or the public may have.
I will start. First of all, Kyle, thank you for your explanation of charrette. We did hear that from the other companies,
Did
but
I have the bit about the tiny car though?
no, and that's, I knew what they were, but I don't, but it was never explained, it was just, talked about, and I was really pleased that you were able to explain it to the public as well, not saying that the public didn't know what they were, but, but I didn't know what it derived from, so I appreciate that, thank you. My question is, about a year ago, our council and a focus group met to do a strategic vision planning, and would that be possible to take those thoughts and ideas and implement them into this comprehensive plan?
Absolutely. That is, so when I mentioned we'll look at past plans and studies, that is one that we would absolutely look at because we understand that Blair has not gotten to where it is now without that previous planning experience or strategic planning experience. So we will look at that, dive into it, and I'll say I worked on a plan in Clay County, Missouri, and that was something that they absolutely wanted to see folded into their comprehensive plan, and so we did exactly that. We took the pillars that were identified within their strategic plan, and we made that actually ended up being the pillars and the chapters within their comprehensive plan. So we found a way to really align both of those documents at the end of the day.
Thank you. Council?
So you discussed about a fully branded project website. I feel there's a lot of weariness in people trying to look up information on different websites. Is this website going to be able to be fully integrated in, say, a tab on the Blair website or information at the Blair City website that then people can get to more easily?
Yes, so we can do either or. I mean, if there's a preference to house everything within its own web page within your current website, we can absolutely do that. But if there is the desire to do a fully branded website specific to the comprehensive plan, but then also have that linked within your city's website, that is something that we can do as well. I will say within everything that we do, I want to go back to this page. You'll notice each of these have a different look, feel, brand to them. So that in the onset of our project process and kickoff is exactly that. We will brainstorm with city staff, with electeds, whoever we need to establish that brand. We will do that as well, and so you'll have a very specific tagline and look and feel to your plan process that will not only be on the materials that we push out and on that website, but it'll also be reflected within your end document as well. So we find that very important for engagement as we push things out. Everyone, residents, people involved can say, I know that brand, that color scheme is specific to the comprehensive plan update, and they know how they're getting involved. But yes, we can incorporate it into the city's website, or we can do a standalone site.
Thank you. And then secondly, Blair currently has a practically non-existent public transportation infrastructure. But looking ahead 5 10, 15 years, I believe there's already a growing demand for that. I think that's going to increase. I think you're going to be the one to answer this, but what kind of insider information or planning can you assist us with what the possibilities and practicalities of that might be?
Sure, yeah, so, love that you're interested in public transit. I think that, there's a role in every community for it. Nebraska actually has a really robust set of rural transit already. So one of the first things that we would do is just check some of the other transit agencies that exist and that might provide, services that don't seem like they're for the general public, but that actually could be leveraged. And then, we can definitely dig into, as a part of the comp plan, what components, what development methods would be appropriate for, really inducing more transit users. Is there a service between Blair and Omaha that needs to happen? Is there a service dedicated to a specific business or a specific industry that we would really see more use from? So if that's of interest, we can definitely dig into how to make that, kind of come to life.
Sorry again. I got a handful of questions about, how you guys operate. So how many comprehensive plans are you guys doing concurrently?
I would say, that varies from 1 p.m. to the other, but I would say right now, I personally am carrying 2 comprehensive plans. I would say overall within a year to 18-month time span, I carry 4 planning processes or so at a time, and I would say that's typically where we try to, that's our sweet spot, I would say, for all of our project managers across the board is trying to not overload and have that balance. And again, those are all at different points in time also. They're not all kicked off at the same time, so they're at different points of those phases. So some of that, intensive need that starts at the beginning of the process or even in that plan writing stage, we're not in the thick of it, all 4 of those at the same time. So I would say right now I have a couple on my belt, but looking for a couple more. But and then also my focus is very specifically to Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska region. So really, I'm not traveling outside of that too much. But overall, our team carries several, and we do comprehensive planning nationally as well. So.
You said you've been doing it 17 years.
Yes.
How many plans do you think you've done?
Oh my gosh. I think just in the time that I've been at Olson over the last 4 years, I've done probably 12, I would say, 12 to 15. And then I'd say total career-wise, potentially 20. But also within that time frame, I have some downtown plans, corridor plans, also just assisting with engagement on other projects and planning work as well. So comprehensive planning is not my only focus, but a significant portion of it.
So it wasn't brought up, the city didn't ask you guys to look at it, but we've got this river out here to the east. Would that be part of the comprehensive plan?
So we would look at, yes, we would look at it in terms of, how is that impacting land development? What is that doing with your floodplain? All facets of that. And then how do you, that's going to be a challenge and a barrier for sure for you as you grow. So that is a component that we would absolutely look at in our existing conditions analysis, and then even more in depth as those conversations continue. So I would open it up to if Lizzie or Chris have additional thoughts. Okay.
It's a little speculative, but obviously the conversation we're having before authorities has come up a lot in Nebraska. It's I know that you guys were on a short list, didn't quite make it, but if they end up opening that up, you guys are back at the table, and people over there crossing his fingers and toes. And so that's definitely an opportunity, obviously extending all of the industrial and potential other kind of, economic drivers that your question, yeah, so obviously Mike has been working with Olson staff quite a bit over the last several years. They will be a very strong voice at the table when we're talking about where we're seeing potential change in land use coming in the near future. Because as Shelby suggested, a lot of this kind of comprehensive planning process is us guiding conversations, but using your guys' input and your guys' expertise as council members and people in the community to help make sure that we're accounting for the stuff that you know and is coming. And of course, Mike and his team are going to be a big part of that as well. So we definitely need to have them at the table, definitely have them be a strong voice at the table for all these stakeholder events.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do we have any questions from the public?
I've got a follow-up, and Kyle, maybe this is better for you, but and as you talked about earlier with the charrettes, you know, other people have mentioned that too. Yours is unique from the standpoint that you talked about a 2-day planning charrette. Now, it's not a sleepover, so you talk a little bit about what that looks like with a multi-day charrette.
Sure, so I can take that and then Kyle can jump in if needed more. But so, yes, it is a 2-day workshop. It is not as intensive as it sounds for those committed, not only on the staff's end, but as well as the stakeholder group. We typically break it up. So I'd say at the end of the day, even between all of our trips and things that we're asking the stakeholders to do, we're asking for about 12 hours. In that 13-month time frame, we're asking for about 12 hours of their time. So in that 2-day charrette, we do about a 3-hour session on day 1. It's, like I said, it's a lot of information and data gathering and conversation within that 3-hour time frame. But we're working through that 3 hours. Then the Olson group specifically is working the rest of the day. So once they're gone, we're still here and working and starting to develop those concepts. And then on day 2, we come in, we work through the morning and into the afternoon, and then we would ask the stakeholder group typically to come in the afternoon and start to have about a 1.5-hour, maybe 2-hour session, but typically an hour and a half, where they're giving us feedback on our concepts, on our recommendations. Are we hitting the mark? What's not working? What's working? Things like that. And then after that, we actually go to a public open house. Where the public gets to come in and see all of our maps, all of our sticky notes, all over the walls. They get to see in real time what the stakeholder group has provided in comments on day 1 and 2, as well as the recommendations that we're putting out there, the mapping exercises, all that, and comment on it as well. And then also after that, all of that goes online to a virtual open house where it's open for 2 weeks, and the public also gets to participate in that at their leisure. It's not a sign in, and once you're in and logged in your comments, you can't get back into it. It's open for 2 weeks. People can start to have dialogues in there, shaping the conversations around everything that's online. And so that truly is our charrette process. Is 2 days, but really ultimately from the stakeholder group, we're asking for about 5 hours total in that 2 days period.
I'll add in, I've done longer. Sometimes there's 3-day charrettes too, where maybe there's like a really important farmer's market, the first farmer's market of the year. It happens on day 3. Well, or it happens in between, and we use the farmer's market as a pop-up in the middle of the charrette. You can kind of mold these things to be whatever's appropriate, but the way I like to think of it is it's kind of like when you put headphones in or put blinders on and just do one thing and just focus on one thing. That's what the charrette is really about. Is we're not looking at any other projects. We're not thinking about anything else. We're there in a room, sometimes literally locked into a room, just sketching things onto a map, just making what would the network look like if it was this? What would it look like if this area was this land use? And okay, well, what if we extended this, to be connected over here, and we're just kind of molding things based on the input that we're getting. So that's how I like to think of the charrette is we're singularly focused on that community for those times where it's closed session, we're just jamming. So
Yeah, I would just add to that. I mean, the work product that we produce in that 2 days is significantly more than what we would be producing if even over like maybe a 2-week time period, if we took back some conversational pieces and then went back to the office and did it. Because like Kyle said, we're so focused in, we're here, that's all we're doing. And also, as hopefully you can see by the way we talk about it, it truly is, for us planning nerds, it is one of the most exciting events that we do within our process. So it truly is very exciting for us to just like pen to paper, you know, and all the dots and the Post-its that come out of the process is just absolutely amazing. So yeah, it's one of our favorite things to do.
Any other questions from the public?
You talk about balancing housing and growth, and so I was just wanting to hear about your experience you have with gathering infrastructure return on investment based on like the land use, and as this comprehensive plan will deal with land use. How much do you take into consideration the way that we zone, the way that things are zoned, and how much they can pay?
So I'll lean on everyone else too if there's some comment there, but that is something that we do start to look at, especially through you know, Eric's report, and what he looks at is you know, we look at not only what are the projections in terms of your population and what are your needs based on market trends in terms of commercial, industrial, all of that, but also we start to look at who's coming into your community, who's going out. Some of that is based on our survey questions as well, so we start to understand where those leakage points are in terms of pull factor even, so that we can start to understand what specific uses need to be coming into Blair so that you can have that economic development and that return on investment. So that'll come as a big component of his process and his report, and then that starts to align with where are those uses most appropriate, and we start to really weigh on that and have those conversations, as well as our stakeholder group is going to be influential in that, we're having economic development individuals, Chamber of Commerce, in those conversations so that we can really start to understand what that market is for Blair as well. So I would say, anyone else have?
All right. A broken record, but again, it's what the community needs. If you're at a place where the community is ready to be, we need to be much more fiscally kind of responsible in, this is the infrastructure we're paying for. We need to know exactly kind of how much tax dollars, how much revenue is going to be able to reimburse us for that. If we're ready for that conversation and we need to have that conversation, we can definitely bring that as a part of, you know, the plan. So it really is about like, what is the most meaningful thing to talk about? What is the most meaningful topic to have in the comp plan? You know, if you don't plan on changing your development patterns, then maybe sometimes those conversations aren't appropriate, and we need to talk more about the character or the placemaking. So it's really adaptability. If it's appropriate, we can pull it into the process.
So a little follow-up to Jake's question. Are you familiar with the group Urban 3 and their value per acre analysis? That Jake heads up our Strong Towns group here in town. So they really kind of focused on that. We're kind of interested in potentially bringing Urban 3 in as well to do some of that analysis.
Yep. So we have partnered with Urban 3 in the past. Actually, we're working in Blue Springs, Missouri right now on their comprehensive plan, and Urban 3 is on our team. So that is a partnership that we're very used to and have worked through. So and we've also worked on projects where it has just been deemed, okay, we're bringing Urban 3 in, and no matter who we select as the comprehensive plan consultant, you will work with Urban 3. So that's something that we've done in the past and are well versed in as well. I will say on our team, Abby Newsham, who was listed on there, she is definitely one of our land use experts. She has done value per acre analysis herself. So that's something that we bring to the team, not to the full Urban 3 level, but it is something that she has done in her past as well. And she is actually a very big component and piece to Strong Towns as well. So she helps co-host the Strong Towns podcast, and so she's very involved in incremental development as well as understanding, you know, the land value piece of all the planning that we do.
Okay.
sewer and roads and all that stuff is the value there, right? And Urban 3 is a very powerful tool, but it's also a very labor-intensive tool. So one way that we would suggest kind of adding value to using that very powerful tool is use the expertise that we have in the room with people that you see here, with Abby, with others on our team to kind of get the broad strokes in, make some big decisions. So when we go to those very technical, very labor-intensive tools, we have a very specific ask, and we can make really wide use of that money.
Follow up on your implementation. So you talked about the importance of implementation. In a 2026, 2027 comprehensive plan, what does that look like as far as the organization here is concerned, and especially for helping to track it over time going forward and keeping our citizens involved in tracking that implementation?
And you're asking what are some of the what are some of the initial steps look like coming out?
Or actually even the technology. I mean, in the past you just got a PDF and it was a chart, and here you go, track your chart.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more tools that are available today.
I'm gonna click back and talk at the same time. But so this guy here, so that's that little chart dashboard looking thing there.
Yeah.
That's a GIS-based tool that we've built a handful of these now for our clients, and they're relatively simple tools to use, but they're pretty powerful in their ability to organize and tabulate data, and then just play with it and see what happens. And move a project from 2027 to 2028 and see how does that affect our kind of cash flow, that kind of thing. But one of the things that we focus on in terms of creating that implementation plan is making sure that there's some low-hanging fruit that we can identify that can get going immediately as soon as we get the plan kind of codified. Not just, oh, we need to create 10 miles of new roads and 500 new single-family development units. Well, what are the things we need to do to get to that point? That's a big leap. And so trying to get those incremental steps along the way that go into the plan and then ultimately can be fed into some sort of management, technology-based management tools so you guys can track it internally and then be transparent to the public on the progress you've made realizing the plan.
And my last question deals with what specifically would you do to help engage the youth in the community, middle school, high school age, to try to learn from them, find out what it is that they would like to see in the community?
Sure, yeah, I'll start. This is definitely Shelby's realm, but the power of some of these, the pop-up events kind of going to where people are is can't be understated. Trying to find a place where they feel comfortable talking, where you can kind of have a conversation with them. I think about, we did a project with the Winnebago tribe in Nebraska, and we had a pop-up event at the powwow this summer, which is super fun and incredible experience. I've never been to one before. But we brought with us a box of Legos and some crayons and some paper, and it ended up starting out looking like a daycare, but ended up turning into a really fun little way to get kids to start opening up and talking. So finding, and I'm talking 7-year-old kids talking about what they felt was important in their community, which is a really cool experience. But finding those ways to kind of relate and kind of getting to kind of drop their guard a little bit and then start just asking them questions, because they definitely have opinions about it. So.
Yeah, I would just add on to that. So yes, the pop-up events, public meetings, even at those, while mom and dad are, going around perusing a poster, we can absolutely have and have done activities where either Legos or maybe we're having pieces that indicate specific, land uses and asking them, build out this specific site. What does that look like? So they can start playing with the pieces and seeing how things fit into specific areas is always an exciting activity. I would say another thing, just almost probably as exciting as doing the charrette for me is one component that I've done in several communities. West Plains was one of them where it was really great to see, but other communities that we've done it is actually engaging the youth through the high school. So working with the high school students Ultimately, at the end of the day, we truly are planning for the youth. They are the ones that are going to be here in the next 20 years or potentially moving away, and how do you get to them to come back with whatever they do post-high school. So really engaging them, starting to have those conversations of what would retain you here in Blair, what would make you, what are you going to Omaha for that Blair does not have, so that we can make sure that you want to stay within Blair or come back. And so really having a visioning session ultimately with the youth is what we ultimately really encourage and do. And also, you'd be really surprised at how much, just how in tune they are to what they need and what they want to see within their community. So it's all really, really, really great to have that conversation, and also just to get them excited and understand what planning in general is always a nice little caveat to that as well. So it's always a nice little plug to understand what community planning, transportation planning can look like within their community and how it impacts them.
I might throw one more shameless, I didn't see Jeff attend my youth engagement presentation at this year's planning conference, so it's fine, it's fine. But I think just adding on, there's so many unique ways, like student council. Ask student council to do something. That's one of the things that they love to do. Go to the basketball game and have a pop-up, just a little math at the basketball game. There's so many, like, not just the farmer's market type of pop-up events that we can do. It's really, really is fun to find all those little, like, ways to engage the youth.
Yeah, I'd say we did, actually just this past fall, we attended Sallisaw, Oklahoma's homecoming football game. We had a tent there, and we engaged with so many, every age possible there. From young to older, they all participated in our activities and gave us input. So that was a very exciting moment to not only see the youth involved, but also the residents, older residents of the community. So exactly to that point, we try to think out of the box on what those pop-up events would be. Any additional?
I don't think so. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Before Bill comes up to speak to what our next steps are, I just want to thank the public very much for being here, and our planning commission members. Your questions, your thoughts, it's very important. It's not just about what the council wants to have happen, it is what you want to have happen. And we're just getting started, and we're very glad you're going to be part of the conversation going forward. Thank you.
So thank you, Mayor. You guys can thank you real tight, real quick, because it's not going to take very long. Just a special thank you to all of you who are from the citizens came tonight. For those who are on staff, you had to come, but I appreciate you being here. But for the rest of you, you didn't have to be here, and so I'm glad you did. For those who might be listening online, whatnot, and for those of you who are here, I really encourage you, again, thank you to Blair Radio for recording this. It will be on their site. For the part that didn't get streamed, you can go back and watch it a little bit later. Really encourage you to take the time to go back, encourage some of your friends and neighbors to take the time to go look at those. All of these presentations will be on the city's website. No decisions are being made by the council tonight on which of these three excellent firms we're going to end up having to select. That comes up on April 14th, which is the first council meeting in April. So we strongly encourage people to come to that night. There'll be two special items on the agenda. One will be a public hearing, simply to hear from all of you, so that you can share your thoughts with the council before then they ultimately have to make that decision of selecting which of these three firms that they're gonna go with. And then the fun process starts of actually getting involved and implementing it. So strongly encourage you to continue to be involved in the whole process as we continue to go forward. The most important thing is your voice. For us to be able to hear from you, from the citizens, to understand what it is that you would like to see in the community, and the council really needs to understand that. So thank you very much. Any questions, comments?
Thank you.
Thank you all.